So recently, The Simpsons aired their series finale as their season 36 premiere. What an odd thing to do. I wonder what it was about. Spoiler warning, by the way. In this episode, everyone in Springfield is getting their final send-off, moving on with their lives and changing for the better. This totally freaks out Bart, who is, at long last, finally turning 11. At the climax, Bart gives an impassioned speech for the Simpsons world never changing, calling Homer a dumbass and claiming he is the same bad father he always was and always will be. In a fit of rage, Homer strangles Bart. The entire episode abruptly crashes, and the world reboots itself. Wow. The Simpsons has gotten weird. Really, really weird. Like, the episode just crashed in front of our eyes. We have gone from frosty chocolate milkshakes to this existential treatise on finales and The Simpsons' natural order. And this isn't an isolated incident. This show has been experimenting more and more and more during the past few seasons. I think we need to officially call this a trend. The Simpsons is weird again. But wait a minute. The Simpsons has always been kind of a weird show. Its early years were revolutionary. This dysfunctional family where the boy would say rude things like "eat my shorts" and "ow, quit it." Shocking material for the early 90s audiences. And as the series continued on, they pushed the envelope more with meta humor and its narrative framing. In my opinion, it wasn't until season 7 when Weird Simpsons truly started. Thanks, Bill and Josh. Everyone's line is going to vary as to what is conventional yet quirky Simpsons and what is truly weird. I tend to put them into 5 categories. 1. Format benders. 2. Meta episodes. 3. Out-of-universe episodes. 4. Fantasies and dreams. And last but not least, the just plain weird ideas. Of these, the format bender is easily the most common unconventional Simpsons episode. Most of them happen due to some specific parody they want to do. Let's tell a non-linear story through time about Homer and Marge's relationship, based on a 1967 film. Let's have Moe threaten to steal one of their wives, and tell 3 stories via flashback, like this film. Let's do one big parody of Boyhood. In other instances, they'll play around with the narrative device. They'll show us the same day from 3 different perspectives, or they'll tell it via flashbacks within flashbacks within flashbacks. In other cases, they'll cut up the story into multiple vignettes. Sometimes these will be interconnected into one overarching narrative, sometimes they'll be largely unrelated. They're quite fond of documentary episodes too, telling the story of growing up Springfield, an ESPN 30 for 30, and a whodunit in the Simpsons household. The subject matter of these are quite commonplace, even down to earth. It's the framing and presentation of the narrative that makes it weird. Next, the meta episodes. You all know these. These are the Simpsons episodes about The Simpsons, or at least has some overarching thesis about television. The Poochie episode is extremely self-aware about certain perceptions of The Simpsons being past its prime. Frank Grimes is a deconstruction of Homer Simpson and the absurdity of the reality of the series. The Principal and the Pauper shook up the status quo, questioning how TV audiences can't deal with change. If you don't think this is a meta episode, go listen to the commentary. Speaking of not dealing with change well, let's consider That 90s Show, which punched us all in the face with the floating timeline. In other cases, they'll do meta shenanigans based on the Simpsons continuity. Like in one Treehouse of Horror, they do a Back to the Future parody that undoes the events of The Way We Was. Or in another, they'll do a parody of The Others, where the Tracy Ullman Simpsons show up as ghosts. And as much as we all try, let's not forget Camp Krustier, a sequel to Camp Krusty created 20 years later. All of these examples are still set in universe, but are keenly self-aware of being a TV show and its continuity. Now, out-of-universe episodes are easy to identify. They're either explicitly presenting The Simpsons as a TV show, or they're taking place in some other reality. Think the 138th episode Spectacular, or the spin-off Showcase. Behind the Laughter continues treating the characters like TV actors, this time in a Behind the Music parody. In The Surfsons, the Simpsons world is transformed into a fantasy setting. And in I, Columbus, they're now living in ancient Rome. You could argue that this example doesn't count because of the framing device, but come on, it's basically The Simpsons in ancient Rome. This isn't like one of those anthology 3-parters. Personally, my favorite types are the fantasy and dream episodes, just cause they tend to be the messiest. Ironically, the tamest example, at least structurally, is the Insanity Pepper episode, because most of the weirdness is quarantined into Act 2. Much later in the series, they'll be like, hey, let's do an Eternal Sunshine parody where Homer explores his memories to unravel a mystery. Now let's do a multi-leveled Inception parody where they explore Homer's subconscious trauma. Now let's do an episode using Lego to explore Homer's relationship with Lisa. Now let's return to the dream within a dream concept and threaten Homer and Marge's marriage. So many fans hate this episode, but I at least respect its commitment to mind-screwing the audience. However, in my opinion, the weirdest Simpsons episode of all time is still Season 29's Flanders Ladder, which takes place in Bart's mind in a coma, while Lisa mentally tortures him. Not only is that weird, but the show is still coming to terms with Maud Flanders' death, making it a sorta meta episode. This episode is a glorious mess, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Finally, remember that time The Simpsons did an episode about Moe's bar rag? Or when The Simpsons were sent to Kang and Kodos' world? Boy, those ideas were just plain weird. Now, there are other examples we could have thrown in here, like those ones with bizarre endings, like Lester and Eliza, that parody of The Prisoner, or that Kent Brockman episode that ends like this. We could have thrown in their 2-parters, or some of their stylish genre parodies. But for our purposes, I wanted to stick to the most unconventional examples, where they are truly stepping out of the box and radically changing how they structure the story. If we look throughout Simpsons history, the series will do 1, maybe 2 of these weird experiments per year. Here is a graph of the first 32 seasons of The Simpsons. And here's where all of these episodes premiered. You can see there was an early spike in Season 8, easily the most experimental of classic-era Simpsons. But then it peters off immediately. Like Season 10, and this humdrum valley from 13 through 16 don't have one at all. Like the most unconventional episode in Season 16 is either Future Drama or Thank God It's Doomsday, but they are pretty weak sauce compared to the stuff before and after. All the way through the 20s in the HD era, we get 1 or 2 experiments per year max. You might be wondering, why does this graph only go up through Season 32? That sure is strange. Okay, so here's what happened in the last 3 seasons. Yeah, The Simpsons is weird now. Look at that Season 34. We've certainly been seeing an uptick in weird Simpsons lately, both in terms of frequency and consistency. Season 35's production run wasn't even completed due to the writer's strike. We only got 18 episodes, and they still made 3 weird ones. And then came back with Bart's birthday right afterward. It's not only their frequency either, it's their execution that's so remarkable. There's an even higher degree of self-awareness to them, that the series has a keen sense of what has been done before and are experimenting to overcome the challenges of being such a long-running series. You know that saying that limitations foster creativity? I think we're seeing that with how modern Simpsons is experimenting. Let's look at the 2 musical episodes from Season 33 as an example. Structurally, the star of the backstage is like many other Simpsons musicals, regularly breaking into song, this time with a floating timeline wrinkle. But instead of Julie Kavner having to carry the lead, Kristen Bell performs all her vocals. Julie Kavner has never been much of a singer, and her voice has become noticeably raspier in later years. So The Simpsons came up with a creative dubbing gimmick. The effect is extremely weird, but it's interesting and does make the episode much more memorable. With Poorhouse Rock, it's about their decision to totally throw away The Simpsons musical conventions. Let's suddenly jump into fantasy sequences and play directly to the audience. Their Mary Poppins and Evita parodies would never. We have to stay in our familiar confines. Whereas stylistically, this plays more like a Disney number, incorporating surreal elements to spice things up. As a result, Poorhouse Rock feels unlike any other Simpsons musical episode. Sometimes they'll use new technology to spice up their framing device. They'll do an episode set almost entirely on YouTube, browsing various Springfielders' channels as they talk about the rise and fall of The Simpsons, ultra-viral sensations. It's like a blend between 22 short films and their documentaries. Sometimes they'll go really high concept and blur the line between fantasy and reality. Why are we doing an episode set entirely in a near-death experience where Lizzo is a happy little elf spirit guide? Wait a minute, did they just kill Homer? And he's in hell now, talking to his father-in-law? And for what? To explore Homer's deep insecurities about his marriage. There are plenty of more traditional ways to do this, and they have in the past, so many times. But season 34 is like, that's boring, we need pre-cancellation Lizzo as an elf. Homer's having the near-death experience, but the audience is having the fever dream. There's definitely a dreamlike quality to these Simpsons experiments in general. Maybe that's the best description. Modern Simpsons is like a dream. They take the familiar world of Springfield and contort it into something uncanny. Perhaps they're dropping them into an entirely different genre, like a Coen Brothers movie or Stephen King's It. We watch in horror as Rich Texan, Fat Tony, and Mr. Burns get brutally murdered in front of our very eyes. Or Krusty the Clown enacting his terror on the children of Springfield. And Marge marries comic book guy. That's the most uncanny aspect of all of them. We still get many of the dynamics we're all used to. Homer is still envious of Flanders, Moe's bar still exists in Springfield. We're just getting a small glimpse into another Simpsons universe, this nightmare world where Homer never got laid. This dreamlike quality extends to their in-universe stories about familiar character traits. We all know that Marge is super protective of her children, and that Bart is her special little guy. So how are we going to explore that feeling? By sending Marge through a series of nightmare fever dreams, and Homer is now an otter playing a didgeridoo. Does Homer have to be an otter? No, sometimes he's an action star or a dog. But it's fun and is a fresh take on how Marge sees her husband. But maybe nightmare fever dreams aren't your thing. How about a gritty and stylish primal homage that parallels her ongoing feud with Luann? This time, Homer isn't a dog. Instead, a dog is causing the grisliest death in series history. Or maybe Bart was never born at all, and we get a glimpse into that reality. Let's test the characters' bonds without that flesh and blood relationship. Could we have done an episode about their internalized resentment toward Bart without this elaborate what-if scenario? Could we have done this feud without this homage? Definitely. But these bizarre, dreamlike fantasies are allowing the show to tap into the characters at a closer level than ever before. I understand her feelings toward Bart way better now, after being trapped in her subconscious. However, the biggest change stylistically with Weird Simpsons is how the series is handling its meta-episodes and self-references. In the past, they would make half-hearted attempts, like Season 28's Camp Krustier. That episode was hyped as a sequel to Camp Krusty, but it completely fumbles the ball in referencing anything directly or even taking that story in the next logical direction. For some reason, Bart and Lisa come back from camp totally traumatized by the experience. It's like the writers turned off Camp Krusty somewhere during Act 2. Why bother doing a sequel if you're gonna throw out what happened in the last one? What is this, The Rise of Skywalker? These later seasons are like, if we're gonna directly revisit stuff, we're gonna literally recreate the moment. The show is digitally colored now, so they're gonna go out of their way to mimic the old ink and paint cell aesthetic. Oh look, we're back in the very first episode of The Simpsons, and time-traveling Bart is here. Now they're recreating Homer falling down Springfield Gorge, except this time, Homer doesn't get back up again. Now Bob's singing the HMS Pinafore, except he's not falling for Bart's tricks. This is such a different approach than Camp Krustier. If they're gonna do an alternate take on Cape Fear for Halloween, they're gonna get that moment right. That's the whole point of doing this stunt. It's like the writers finally got rid of that silly, we're too cool to remember what happened thing, and are leaning into the nostalgia. In another Halloween, we literally got Simpsons Nostalgia, the Treehouse segment. Is Simpsons World the most indulgent and masturbatory thing in Simpsons history? Yeah, probably. But when you've been on for 35 years and have done nearly that many Halloween specials, you've earned your victory lap. And hey, it's not entirely about jamming as many beloved references as possible. There's clearly a cynical message being conveyed. We've gone from doing a Westworld parody about Itchy and Scratchy to doing a Westworld parody about The Simpsons. This show has become this bizarre Ouroboros, eating and digesting its own content. But the weirdest thing of all is the series' openness and vulnerability about its own legacy. It reminds me a lot of the Oakley and Weinstein days when they did Poochie, where they literally had Bart delivering a speech from the writers to their nitpicky online fans. It was addressing the discourse. Where the Poochie episode was fiery and direct, modern Simpsons takes a more surreal and contemplative bent. The entire conceit of Lisa the Boy Scout is that these hackers are going to hijack the show to ruin it by revealing all the writers' worst ideas. Martin being an undercover cop would ruin the show. Selma actually being Marge's mother would ruin the show. Eddie being Ralph's father... Wait, that makes a lot of sense. Instead of doing a Poochie-esque satire about the fans thinking the jockey elves ruined the show, they're leaning right into it. Let's have fun. Let's ruin the hell out of this thing. Let's throw in the most insane fan theories while we're at it. And look, there's the jockey elves. They're poking fun at their actual history. By the time we get to Bart's birthday, the season 36 premiere/finale, the show has gone all in on the weird. It's reached this level of multifaceted weirdness. We have Conan O'Brien presenting a series finale as our season premiere. We have this hack GPT thing pretending like this is an episode generated by AI. Then we have an entire nightmare world for Bart to navigate, where the status quo is crumbling around him. You know, we've come a long way since Troy McClure showed us some behind-the-scenes footage. The audience is now being fed out-of-universe meta nonsense with Conan and an in-universe existential crisis at the same time. That's very ambitious. As a YouTuber who covers The Simpsons, this episode hits home especially hard because I have talked at length about the never-ending status quo. That Homer and Marge always fight. Milhouse's life is always depressing. Nelson's dad always abandons him. During the Nelson video, I remember opining that I feel so freaking bad for that kid on a personal level, and the TV reality that he lives in. But questioned if the series should do anything about it, because they can't just solve every character's problem, there would be no show. So in some respects, seeing all of these happy endings is making all my little fandom dreams come true. Except for Mo and Selma getting married, I guess. But Bart's birthday is a full-throated defense of the Simpsons status quo. Hell, it actually reads as a defense of the series' continued existence in its 36th season. Bart's not gonna turn 11. Homer and Marge will not stop having stupid fights. Homer's not gonna become the perfect father. The idea that Homer strangling Bart is what snaps the world back to reality is so utterly bizarre, yet oddly beautiful. The triumphant return of one of the very first Simpsons tropes. I walk away from Bart's birthday totally baffled and awestruck by what I've just seen, that the writers put all these issues out there so raw and nakedly. Like, what even is this show? The end result feels like a series working through its anxiety about its future. It's like Grandpa started smoking a lot of weed and got super introspective and giggly. What does a season 36 of The Simpsons look like? Bart is the perfect protagonist for this kind of story, as he is the character with the fewest active problems. Of course Bart would want to live as a 10-year-old forever. We saw this in the Marge fever dream too, where she's working through her feelings about Bart growing up. The Simpsons as a series has always struggled with change, and we are seeing that theme bleed into the fabric of the show. I think we should ascribe a lot of this modern Simpsons weirdness to the rise of Matt Selman, who has been running the majority of the show since season 33. They were like, I wonder who should help take over for Al Jean while he works on other responsibilities. I know, we'll get the guy who wrote that 90s show. Yeah, I know a lot of people hated that episode. I myself wrote an embarrassingly angry forum post at the time. But the guy also wrote the weirdo masterpiece Trilogy of Air, and like a huge chunk of the all-time modern classics. This is who you'd want to pick to keep the show fresh. Selman has been very open about the weird nature of The Simpsons and the characters' evolving backstories. To him, it's this confusing and dysfunctional tree they're constructing, one weird branch at a time. There are obviously so many other co-showrunners and writers that play a factor. We need to give our flowers to folks like Carolyn Omine and Michael Price, for example. But when you have someone like Matt Selman helming things, who actually thinks about this weirdo shit, it's gonna creep into the show. And let me be clear, Season 34 is the weirdest Simpsons season of all time, but there are still 16 episodes in it that are relatively normal, at least by Simpsons standards. Right after Lisa the Boy Scout, they'll go back to a conventional Marge gets a job plot. They haven't thrown the sitcom baby out with the postmodern bathwater. Part of what makes these gimmicky experiences so exciting is that they're surrounded by mundane normalcy. I would hate it if the show became this machine of self-indulgent meta-narrative garbage every week. A definite balance is needed, and so far, they're achieving it. A lot of people have been promoting this "The Simpsons is good again" mantra, and I'll confess right now, I did accidentally contribute to this discourse becoming a thing. Even though I got cut from that article, like what the hell, Vulture? But maybe it's for the best, because I've never been into that specific framing. It still inevitably invites comparisons to the Simpsons classic era, expectations that neither the viewers nor the writers can ever live up to. I've seen so many lapsed fans walk away disappointed after seeing the headlines and checking it out. I think The Simpsons is weird again. It's fantastical, referential, hypothetical, nostalgic, nightmarish, fanservice-y, and self-aware. They don't always nail it. Sometimes it's an embarrassing mixed bag, and you wonder why the hell they went for that dated reference. But it's rarely boring, which is pretty damn impressive for a season 36 of anything. In fact, I would argue that weird is the better compliment and a better goal for a TV show. Because weird is interesting, weird is boundary pushing. I like that The Simpsons is tapping into the weird more regularly, breaking more of its self-imposed rules to find us something fresh and new. So thank you, Weird Simpsons. In the real series finale, I look forward to finally seeing Marge become a robot. You know, I'm really gonna miss this place.